My name is Aisha Kasuri. I've been in education since I was born, first as a student, and then after that I made it my bread and butter. And my Twitter account does say I'm a lifelong learner. I love learning and I love teaching. This is my fourth or fifth SOT that we're doing. We conducted a similar session in Lahore back in November, and this is sort of a part two of the same series. We talked about what it meant to have a school that was inclusive. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'll go into exactly what we're going to talk about in a little bit. I think it's a little warm for our panelists. Yes, so everybody please be comfortable and then we will start. Let me start off by introducing the panel to you first. On my left first is Ms. Orali. And Ms. Orali Selver is a social entrepreneur. She's been in social innovation field for the last 10 years. She has founded and curated several TED Talks, and I think you're the founder of TED Barcelona, right? It's the TEDx Barcelona. And she's also the founder of a company called Balance Association, which coaches women leaders in communication and storytelling in emerging countries. Thank you so much for being on our panel. We appreciate it. Right next to Ms. Orali, yes, please feel free to clap, and thank you. Next on our panel is Dr. Abdul Nair. He is a physicist. I was petrified of having you on the panel, but he is a physicist, and after being with Quaid-e-Azam University for the last 3 decades, I believe, he is in the enviable position of being retired, but he's not really retired because he works on research and has done several papers on education, nuclear disarmament, and also has been associated with Princeton, LUMS, and the Ali Institute of Education, amongst many others. Thank you very much. Right next to Dr. Nair is Ms. Judith Herbertson. Ms. Judith is the deputy head of DFID and is responsible for managing one of DFID's largest education programs worldwide. She is currently working here in Pakistan, but something very dear to my heart is a teacher. So thank you again for being on our panel. We appreciate it. Right next to Ms. Judith is Mr. Javed Iqbal. Mr. Javed Iqbal has spent the last 2 decades with Fortune 500 companies spearheading large-scale business transformation efforts. He is now the co-founder of a digital transformation firm. We're very happy to have him on our panel because he is a futurist. And so he will be talking about the school of tomorrow, the world of tomorrow, and what a future for students looks like. So thank you, panel. Just a few simple housekeeping rules. Everybody, we'd appreciate it if you keep your cell phone switched off or on silent. Questions will be right at the end. Again, we'd appreciate questions rather than comments so that we can answer them at the end of the evening. Now, our discussion today is on inclusive classrooms and what learning without limits looks like. Our conference has 5 different facets. So what we're going to try to do is see how we can connect all of these to look at what an inclusive classroom can look like. Each one of you has, can talk a little bit about your particular field and how it, how we can actually manifest that in a classroom. I'd like to begin with keeping it local to Pakistan, and then we'll talk about how things are globally. And then we'll bring it back to Pakistan to see how we can make the change here. So that hopefully when we leave this hall today, we have some tangible things to do in our classrooms when we go back to work on Monday. Okay? So firstly, I'd like everyone to perhaps take 2 or 3 minutes to describe what it means to you to have a classroom that is inclusive and learn without limits. Yes, we can just go in a row. Absolutely.
Hello, can you hear me fine? Yeah, salam alaikum. So, as Aisha said, I work a lot on gender stereotypes. I really like the idea that we actually trap children into boxes much more than we think. Would it be little girls or little boys? So what I work on basically is, and what I would love to do even more, is how can we develop more emotional intelligence, especially into our boys, and teach them more than be a man, no, mardan. Let's try to do something beyond this. And for the little girl, how can we develop more of their self-esteem, their self-confidence, so that they have as big career aspirations as they can have. So for me, these are the main areas in my work.
Perfect. Dr. Nair?
I think the idea of inclusive education that I think is most relevant to our society is described in this concept note very nicely by saying that an inclusive education will include economically disadvantaged children in the education process. Consideration of how the governments can be directed towards achieving this kind of thing. There are so many children, to about 25 million children still out of schools, and again among those who are inside the schools, many of them are being given extremely poor education, and that is not what one can call an inclusive education. So I think the idea of inclusive education must include all the disadvantaged children that there are in this society.
Thank you very much. Judith?
Thank you. I'm going to echo some of your, excuse me, some of your words. I think for me, inclusion starts well before any child even arrives at the school gate. It's about the government commitments to the between 12 and 24 million out-of-school children, their commitment to 26A of the Constitution, how much money they put into it, how they train, select, support teachers and head teachers, how they build schools, what kind of access, therefore, they provide to the children. And then I think, building on what Aurélie said a little bit, recognising children as individuals. They don't come as blank slates at the school gate either. They come with a mother tongue, they come with a certain ethnic, faith, background. They come from different levels of poverty and wealth. Some of them will come extremely stunted, and therefore with cognitive impairments due to lack of nutrition, and then frankly their educational ability is very limited. Some of them will come with disabilities, obviously they come with gender, and they come with varying levels of aspirations and abilities to achieve those aspirations. And then I think you've got three things going on in an inclusive classroom. That's about the teachers. How well trained are they? What's their pedagogy? What's their skill set to be able to respond to these individuals coming in with very, very diverse needs and backgrounds? Secondly, the materials. How much do we adhere to the 2006 reformed curriculum with textbooks that present positive images of this diversity? And then thirdly, the values and the behaviours and the approaches encouraged within the classroom that allows all those children to be treated as individuals and encouraged to reach their potential and explore and critically engage with issues rather than being fed perhaps stereotypes and perhaps negative images and unhelpful constructs for their future.
Thank you, Judith.
So my take is that 85% of the jobs that people are going to be doing in the future don't exist right now. And as we look at this world that increasingly gets connected and gets more inclusive in that sense of the word, using social media as well as all the other areas and channels that are out there, I think the need for inclusivity as well as readiness for the next generation of living requires a radical rethink. In our classrooms, the way they were designed more by the industrial age, where factory workers would sit and understand and learn how to run through an assembly line. That is not the skill set that's needed for our future. So these multiple dimensions of learning are not going to just come from just one facet of a classroom.
Sure.
I think there are many aspects of it. So this rethink should instill in these children, in the educators, in the teachers themselves, a self-belief and an openness to experiment with new ideas to take this forward.
Okay, so we'll just work our way back in this conversation. I think this is a good pattern to follow. So, Mr. Iqbal, I'd like to ask you then, coming to what you were just saying. So what you're saying is 21st century skills. Is that right? Like we need to teach children collaboration, we need to teach them how to think critically, we need to teach them how to communicate effectively, all through digital technologies? Is that?
Sure. I think humans are evolving from the way they do each of these facets that we talked about, whether it's learning or communication and so forth. But the basic foundational human hasn't changed. The needs have not changed. The way you learn first and then teach them is radically changing. And if you think about it, each child that's, let's say, going to school now also has the ability to go and experience other channels that are available. I mean,
Sure.
I was talking to people about YouTube and others as well, that not only provide you targeted videos, but also ancillary sort of not only comments and videos and so forth to creatively broaden your thinking as well. So the classroom in itself is expanding because the application of the skill set that's required to be a successful person, whether it's in your line of work, whether it's in achieving success in life, is changing.
Sure.
So I think it's definitely important.
Absolutely. Judith, something that you spoke about, and I think it's very important, especially if there are teachers here in our audience, to understand what you said about children already being at a disadvantage before they enter the classroom. Can you talk a little bit about that so that our audience understands what that means?
Yes, I think some of that is physical. Think some of it is intellectual, and some of it is about sort of aspirations from homes. I mean, it's very interesting to hear what you're saying. I'm thinking about the different levels at which children experience education in Pakistan. I taught for 17 years in the UK, and even there the differences were significant, but they were perhaps more condensed. In terms of the children here, we know, many of us, that 44% of children are stunted by the age of 5, which means their brains are significantly smaller, which means when they come to school, that is the brain they are presenting with, and therefore their ability to learn particularly difficult concepts is already constrained. I think also we know about children that grow up in households where their parents have been educated particularly to a higher level, where they've had books in the household, they've been taught to read, etc., because their parents have those sorts of expectations. They're socialised, they're trained, they're coming in already sort of running rather than taking baby steps. Obviously we come in, with children with different disabilities, both physical, but also the more hidden ones, and I think probably Pakistan is learning much more about that, as we did in the UK, around spotting dyslexia, spotting different forms of mental health, which affects children just as it does adults, spotting things like attention deficit disorder,
Absolutely.
the kind of behaviours that will make it very challenging for a teacher to handle a classroom. I mean, many of the schools I go into have got 80, 100 children in the classroom. How one teacher in rural Banu is supposed to spot all those differences that they've got in front of them and then actually respond to them, I have no idea. I wouldn't be able to do it even with years of experience. So I think it's about that, recognising the diversity, knowing where we want to go, but also trying to bridge that gap for the children that are coming in from a very low start and a very varied start.
So basically, the vision has to include all of these factors, because right now we are building structures, but we are inside those structures, we are not putting trained staff that can effectively perhaps overcome all these problems. So that is a huge problem in this country. Coming to one of those problems, Dr. Nair, is I was looking at your research paper on Pakistan studies and how authors are not given any guidelines on national identity, on including internal ethnic groups, on including minorities, the cultural diversity of this very rich country. Can you comment on that a little bit and tell us about what you found there so that we can make sure that we include those things in a classroom?
What is most unfortunate is that the study that you are referring to was done some 14 or 15 years ago, and nothing has been done so far to remove that difficulty over the last 14, 15 years ago. And in the meantime, so many students have passed through the same
Absolutely.
old system. Yes, indeed, I think the kind of education we were giving, kind of civic education we were giving to students through our disciplines like social studies, Pakistani studies, and also through language courses in Urdu and English, was about creating a kind of person in this society who would be more Islamized than being made a civilized citizen of a society, of a multicultural, multilingual, multi-faith society.
Tolerant.
And that actually was a problem that was identified long ago to have been at the center of all the problems that we were facing at that time or were continuing to face even now. I think the point is that when in schools, not only the students are taught skills of learning and also taught to be citizens of society. And to be this citizenship education is given a very important place in education curriculum everywhere. And it has to be a kind of, and this is where we actually show what kind of citizens we want to see in future. And these citizens are supposed to be those who are considerate to others, who know about the society, who care about the society, who try to be, to know their responsibilities, to know their rights, are able to know where they are standing and so on, and to be able to live with people of different faiths and different castes and colors and so on and so forth. That is what this is supposed to be. Pakistani education system that has been going on at that time and even now doesn't actually do that. In fact, this particular curriculum in Pakistan has turned out to be an ideological battleground. This is where actually our competing ideologies in the society are battling it out. They are, there was a time when, I give one example, as an example, there was a time when Awami National Party was in the government in the Pakhtunkhwa province, and there it changed the curriculum completely. And then that party was out and Jamaat-e-Islami came back in with Imran Khan, and they brought the old things back again. So this actually shows the intensity of this kind of battle, that is ideological battle that is going on in society, where a section of the society wants the society to be fashioned around faith only, and the other to be around being a part of the civil society.
Dr. Nayyar, the only question I can ask you after that is, after 14 years, why did you give up? You still need to, this study needs to come to its fruition. Otherwise, we will continue to make these nationalistic sort of students coming out and further divide this country, because we don't need that. So is there hope that we can still continue that dialogue?
Well, the point is that people have not given it up. I mean, they are continuing to fight about it. The thing is that this is in the public education sector, and public education sector is defined by whosoever is in the government. And the government has to compromise with this party and that party and that party, and then it sort of what comes out is a result of all the political compromises that go in there,
Yes.
rather than on exactly what the children need in education.
Absolutely. Ghali, you talked about gender equality, and our keynote speaker this morning also sort of gave us a little slap on our hands for calling it inclusive and said it should be equal. Yeah, who is anybody to include anybody else? And so can you talk to me a little bit about what an inclusive climate is in a classroom in terms of the way we use inclusive communication, especially where there are gender biases. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
So, we tend to socialize our kids with different, what I was saying before, no, with different boxes. We tend to interrupt girls twice as much as we interrupt boys. Would it be parents or would it be teachers? We tend to encourage our girls to play some specific type of activities where they don't mess with their outfit, basically, and they're quiet and more restrained, and we encourage boys to play any competition, any physical activity, any sport, which is actually developing this ability to take risk, you know, and to, why not, be an entrepreneur afterwards or take some risk in their career. So there's a lot of conditioning that we can think about. Would it be as a parent or as a teacher? Which kind of books do we have on them? And do we have any female protagonists in the books we read to our kids? Do we do some media literacy? We're saying about, okay, what can we do concretely in the classrooms? Do we analyze, for example, the movies we see and see who is speaking? Who is actually wearing what? Who is having any profession? And having this kind of questioning about what we let our kids see. No? Even the cartoons. There's the Gina Davis Institute in the US, which has analyzed different family movies, and out of them they can see all the bias that is still transmitted through different movies. So I think there's first a part of awareness on this side, and then I believe a lot in the type of language we use, yes. Right? I think everywhere in the world we tend to have a schooling system which is very top-down, very ranking, very much about the master and the teacher telling what has to be done and children obeying. And this whole ranking and is messing up with our own identity. So I do believe a lot, for example, in nonviolent communication. And I do believe that schools have to teach this, yes. This method. And it's not only a concept, it's a real method with different steps. So the idea is when something upsets you, instead of denying it and shoving it under the carpet or getting angry at the person, the idea is following the steps of when you do this and being a fact, not a judgment, I actually feel that, which is my feeling, not, again, an accusation, because my need of what? Of love, of recognition, of inclusiveness is not respected, and I ask you to. So I do believe that this method, which has been taught all around the world in contexts much more complex, like refugee camps and like in different, in Israel and Palestine, in places where people have killed each other's families. They actually used this tool to bridge the gaps. So I do believe we have to mind our language much more, and all the insults that we don't think about in our language every day. And also try to implement this kind of nonviolent communication method, teach it concretely in schools.
And I think in order to teach it, every one of us sitting in this room first needs to reflect on how we use it ourselves, because we do it in such a subliminal manner that I don't even think we ourselves are aware of it. So first it takes a little bit of, I think, soul searching to see where you are coming from. And women in this country are, in any case, already at a disadvantage. And to further be bogged down by the same research that you're talking about, Aurélie, it also says that women get asked the less analytical questions and more of the recall questions. So as teachers, as educators, we must look at the communication first and foremost before we can do anything else. Panel, I would also like for you, if there's anything that you would like to comment on when you are all talking about, please do so. Because I thought I saw Judith writing something away, that if there's something, Judith, that you want to add, please do. Yeah, you're good. Okay, so Mr. Javed, I would like to come back to you. And since you are a futurist, talk to us a little bit about what an inclusive future will look like in terms of digital transformation.
So I think the criteria of success needs to be redefined. When I was I can sort of comment on the education in Pakistan and abroad as well. When I was growing up, the criteria of success was the grades that you achieved at the end. That became the end-all, be-all of success and failure, which became a tricky one. I was never one of those who was better at test taking rather than learning. So those are definitely different skills as well.
Absolutely.
So I think in the success criteria, the delivery of the kind of academic subjects versus the consumption of these academic subjects versus the test taking of these academic subjects versus the grading of them. If you look at it from all these 4 dimensions, there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of what does that mean in terms of a successful or an unsuccessful student. I think let's create that as a baseline. But if you use sort of futuristic technology towards that, some of the conferences that I've been talking to people at, they're talking about how the multidimensional way of learning, how artificial intelligence, how data analytics can help these fashions. So what they're doing now is they're trying to include some of these into the learning management systems that exist out there. So if you've, for those who've seen Blackboard and some of the other LMS systems out there, they create or try to create a learning journey that takes you throughout the life cycle of, let's say, your college education. And throughout each of those facets, you are not only just receiving your lesson plans and submitting your assignments and getting the grades, but you're also communicating with others as part of a learning community, where the challenges or the problems or the questions that are being asked is not only a single-threaded one-person answer, it's a community sort of a crowdsourcing, so to speak, effort that is required to do that. And I think Khan Academy and some of the other sort of electronic and internet learning mechanisms have fueled some of those as well. So I think as we look forward, the first piece is redefining success. The secondly, the learning is not just limited to a classroom. Learning begins in the classroom. You're going to school to learn how to learn, not to just learn the subject that's taught to you. Because, like I said earlier, the jobs that people are going to be doing or the pieces that they're going to be employing themselves towards don't exist right now in the future. So foundationally, how are we getting them ready for those? And using these technologies that are easy to adopt, that instills in students the way they learn. So instead of maybe reading and comprehending, a lot of it could be watching and comprehending or listening and comprehending the different styles of learning as well.
Yeah.
Some of these I struggle with as a child. I mean, my mother's sitting in the audience. She spent years trying to instill some of these in me, and I struggled. But it took a better system of learning in the US to sort of bring that out in me as well. So some of those things are definitely important.
And, when we were talking about Khan Academy, I have to ask this question. Is the digital world inclusive? Because half the children in Pakistan don't have access. So what do we do there then? How can we make sure that it is equal for all? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but it is a problem that even in private schools, we don't always have good Wi-Fi or signals, or we can't just connect like this. And in rural areas, they don't even have access to computers. So how do we, at that point, create this same classroom that we're trying to create for tomorrow? How can we include them? They know one way of teaching. The teachers right now, and Judith can tell us a little bit more about teacher training and what's happening in that world. But because she works directly with these schools, but does it include?
So here's how I will answer that. So if you take a broader sense, not just Pakistan, majority of the world don't have access to this right now. Look at African countries, India lives in multiple time zones,
Right.
if you know, so to speak, as well. I think what this kind of technology does, first of all, it spreads rather quickly. So if you look at infrastructure for phones and telecommunications that took 30 years to build, one cell phone tower just made it easy, right?
Right.
You didn't have physical phone lines, but one cell phone tower gave access to people within hundreds of miles around it with this technology. And a lot of governments are starting to invest in these programs as well. So I'm not saying that, you know, right now, whoever has the advantage of digital is the winner and the others are not. I think there's going to be a time where cohabitation is going to continue, but the divide is, in my opinion, going to continue to narrow down because these technologies, as they get prevalent,
Yes.
and more people start using it.
Yes.
Even if you think about it right here, an average person who maybe has a phone, it doesn't even have to be a smartphone.
Yeah, right,
They cannot read and write,
right.
but they can watch a video. They can record a video. They can take a video as well, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these learning, like I said, alluded to earlier as well, the visual aspect of learning, the hearing aspect of learning is changing the facet of learning in itself.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank
And
you.
the next piece is to actually get graded on that as well, which is still a TBD. So we'll have to see how that goes.
We're gonna come back to that scary thing called assessments in a school without limits. Judith, tell me, what does a physical inclusive classroom look like?
Well, I think that can be relatively straightforward. I mean, there's been a huge push in Pakistan by a lot of, the provincial level, in particularly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and also in Punjab, in terms of 4 basic things: having electricity there, having running water, having bathrooms, and having a boundary wall. And you can see across those 4 things why that makes it more inclusive for younger children and older children, for girls and boys, because we all know that the transition point for girls comes at puberty, between certain grades, and they just won't stay in school once they reach puberty unless there are decent bathrooms. It's a basic fact, but it's true. A lot of parents won't send their children to school, particularly the girls, unless there's a boundary wall, partly for sort of protection from prying eyes, but I think increasingly and sadly, now that those taboos are broken, to try to keep the place a little bit safer. I used to think that, you know, sort of teaching was down to some special magic dust that some charismatic teacher had, but actually there are a lot of basic building blocks that you can put in place for a successful classroom and a successful lesson and a successful set of learning by the children. Having enough light, having enough air, be that hot or cool, having water so that the children just feel comfortable, and having furniture. I mean, the difference between sitting at a chair and desk, feeling like you're getting a little bit of an adult treatment, that you're respected, that there's enough space, that you have decent textbooks, before even the dialogue goes on in terms of what's in the national psyche about inclusion or not, what they're saying about India or not, or about Kashmir or not, those basic pieces. And when we start talking about disabled children, are all the desks and chairs the same? Is there a bit more space? Are there ramps? Do all the children have to go up and down stairs or not? There are some real fundamentals that you can put in place that means a child that walks into the school thinks, this is a school that works for me, not just now as a 7-year-old, but maybe all the way through until when I'm 18. And again, in different areas of Pakistan, and forgive me, I'm an outsider, but the parents and the extended family and the community and what they think about that little girl or that 15-year-old girl going to school can be influenced in terms of what the school is providing, both in physical facilities and also in terms of what they know is going on in the classroom, what's the gender of the teacher and what's the kind of dialogue going on in there.
Dr. Saab, something that I'd like to ask you, can children, because one of the things that Judith was saying was that we want to give children dignity in a classroom, to learn in a dignified manner. Can children really learn if there's always fear of war and there's always fear of for their safety? What does that do to a child's learning, and how can we include that in our curriculum so that our children do feel dignified and safe within classrooms? Sorry.
Yeah. Let me take on with take that point that Judith was talking about. Inclusive classrooms. the reality in Pakistan is that classrooms are inclusive, but in a very negative way. I have seen in Pakistan classrooms which one small room having 3 classes being taught simultaneously. How much more inclusive can you be? This is something which is actually, something which is a reality in Pakistani setting. And therefore, the fundamental question, when you want to have inclusive classrooms, then you actually ought to look after the needs of each and every child that you have over there, and to have to take care of the needs of each and every child actually requires not only training but also all the facilities that go with it. But on the other hand, there is this situation in Pakistan where there are such deprived schools that they do not even have full classrooms, and therefore they put 4 or 5 classes in the same room, and one single teacher teaches to them throughout the day. Other than that, I think your question about the environment that students that is conducive to students is very appropriate. There's this. Fear is something which is now with all of us everywhere in the Pakistani society. But I think in Pakistani schools, children are many, they have to be saved from physical harm, as well as from mental harm, as well as from emotional harm. All of these harms go on in Pakistani classroom. Physical harm in terms of the punishments that the students get. I remember that there used to be caning was very common in Pakistani schools until some time ago they decided that no, caning will be disallowed. And I remember how Pakistani teachers actually said that very loudly, and are continuing to say that no, without caning we just cannot teach. We have to have the permission to cane students, to punish them when they don't study. So physical harm, if caning is not allowed, then there are other means of of punishing students, and that physical harm is continuing. There is this associated with that is the emotional harm, abusing, reducing the self-esteem of students, and making them very subdued rather than being ebullient in classrooms, and trying to make them submissive to authority. Teacher is the authority, everybody has to be submissive to the authority kind of attitude. And I think most of the teachers actually quite value submission to authority. They think that should be a part of their training duty. They should be making children submissive to authority. Then of course there are these mental harm that is caused in classrooms, wrong ideas, making them unsocial or antisocial, or creating hate in them. The kind of report we talked about last time also noted all of those things that are contained in our curricular guidelines given by the Ministry of Education, where they are told to hate some sections of the society, they are told to love wars, they are told to jihad, and etc., etc. And then mental harm is also inflicted by very bad teaching. I think I'll take a minute on that particular point. The government, you mentioned Article 25A of the Constitution, which now makes education compulsory and enjoins upon the government to provide education, but the government is unable to provide education, and therefore the government is now insisting that the private sector should take over. And the private sector has slowly risen to about 40% of the total enrollment. Of this 40%, about maybe 5%, 10% would be good schools, those who are actually providing good quality education. The rest of them are private schools of poor neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And these private schools of poor neighborhoods make a financial plan which includes taking teachers who are not demanding. So if you go around now, you will find private schools paying 2,000, 3,000 rupees per month to a teacher, which is 1/5, 1/3 of the salary of the payment that is given to unskilled laborers in Pakistan,
Yes.
recommended for unskilled laborers in Pakistan. Now, these teachers are essentially, matriculate or intermediate passed girls, and they themselves have had bad education, and therefore they actually transfer all their poor understanding onto students. So I've been to length and breadth of Pakistan trying to look into these private sector, poor neighborhood private sector schools, and I have seen them, the kind of atrocity that is committed on students. I mean, if you say A over B plus C over D, they say A plus C over B plus D is the answer.
Right.
And if they teach mathematics of this kind, then you can understand that mathematics doesn't become a subject of reasoning, it becomes subject of simply rote learning. Similarly, they teach wrong English, they teach wrong Urdu, and basic learning skills that come with languages and reasoning are simply not given in these schools. Now, that is a great mental harm that is being committed on students in those things.
So they're doing more damage than good.
Yep.
Yeah. It is a big problem. I wanted to sorry, go ahead, Judith.
May I just make a very
Please,
quick comment
please
as well,
do. Please
backing
do.
up what you're saying? Some of you may have heard of the Alif Alarm campaign, and they did a survey as to why children dropped out of school. And the biggest reason girls were not in school was because their parents wouldn't let them go to school. Fair enough, that's probably obvious. For the boys, it was because they didn't see the point of being there, or they didn't like the way they were treated, because they were on the receiving end of physical punishment or what they termed mental abuse. That is a huge loss. And on the low-cost private schools, I can't tell you yet how much I support that. It's just dreadful. These very low, so what am I trying to say? People who are trying to put their children into the low-cost private schools, who are scrimping and saving, they're already on low salary themselves, but because the government isn't providing, they think the private sector must be providing something better because you have to pay for it. And so they're scrimping and saving to get their children into these schools. And then, as you
Right.
say, sir, the teachers are often people who they say, well, they wouldn't be able to work anywhere else, so they should be pleased they've got this job. They can't demand a higher salary because they're not qualified, and therefore that somehow makes a sort of virtuous circle, whereas clearly it makes a vicious circle for the children and the parents, and it's not taking those children anywhere. I mean, this isn't a model that I would recommend, but in the UK, about 7% of children go to private schools, and they are highly regulated. And the government's responsible for the other 93%, which means that whole sort of domestic accountability is a much stronger contract. Once you get the private sector taking it on, and I accept if you've got 24 million children out of school, you need more than the time that the government sector will take to catch up. But this has to be something done to regulate the private sector. Otherwise, there are generations of children and parents that are being
Are going to
deluded.
be. Thank you so much. I did want to talk a little bit more about what's happening globally and how we can bring it locally, but unfortunately we don't have time left, and we do have questions from the audience. So what I'd like to end our conversation up on stage is that I think not everything is dismal. We are becoming aware of these things. We are taking steps to include girls. We are taking steps to change that from inclusivity to equality, inshallah, one day in this country, and globally for that matter. We are looking, like Dr. Nayyar said, into changing how the curricula is written. We are at least questioning it now. We are looking at the physical spaces of school. The government is working with foreign aid to make sure that the infrastructure is there, that quality education is brought to Pakistan, especially in the rural areas. And there are partnerships that are taking place between private and the public sector. in terms of information technology and making sure that we change and the way we think about education. I think we are doing that as well with conferences like this, where we do talk about what a school of tomorrow is going to look like. We do talk about now that our grades, everything, our children do need other skills, communication being right at the forefront of that. I will ask everyone to just give, if you want to share any thought, to conclude this topic for 1 minute, and then we can go to questions. Aurélie, let's start with you.
Okay. I think we have to learn to listen. Really. We occupy the space, we keep talking, and we don't listen. First. Second, we have to develop gratitude. Gratitude is massive. Say thank you. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now, and not just listen to us, is actually to turn to your neighbor right now and to tell him or her 2 positive things about that person. Come on, don't be fake.
Go
for
ahead.
it now.
Go ahead, audience. Let's make this interactive.
2 compliments.
Just 2
nice
compliments.
things, and mean it from the heart. I like your dupatta. You look nice. You have a nice
To
smile.
the
Whatever.
person-
Go for it.
To the
Wake
person
up.
next to you. Aurélie, I would like to say thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you for
And-
inviting me.
And no, what you are doing is really very important. And that's why you're coming to my school on Tuesday to train my teachers. Yeah.
I will love this.
Do you want to say something nice to Dr. Nayyar? Yes. I think Aurélie is going to say something nice to you.
Okay.
And he's like, he's scared now. I really like how you managed to structure all your thoughts. That's really good.
So did that feel good, everyone? Did you?
So
did you-
gratitude,
Yeah.
really.
Gratitude.
Then we need to teach mindfulness.
Yes.
We need more mindful individuals. And for this, I mean, there are many schools around the world teaching meditation. There are many jails, prisons teaching meditation and a few minutes every day to
Rest
have
your
more
mind.
mindfulness. We need to teach empathy. There's this in Canada, Roots of Empathy. They bring a baby into schools so that young kids just learn what it means to take care of somebody else. And again, we were saying about nonviolent communication. So yeah, that's
Thank
it.
you so much, Aurélie. Thank you. Dr. Nayyar?
Well, the thought that comes to my mind now is that, when it is the attitude of we citizens. When there is no road, we make a lot of noise, we come out on the streets and we force the people, responsible people to do the needful. When there is no water, we come out and make noises. When there is no gas, we come out and make noises. When there is no electricity, we make out and come out and make noises. But then about education, we don't make noises. We don't come out in the streets and say, no, we demand education. We will now hold you responsible that now, since you have said that you have all yourself, the governments have passed Article 25A of the Constitution, making it a fundamental right of every child, and that you have promised that to every child between the age of 5 and 16, the government will pay for the education. The government must do it. It must come out and say this very loudly. Unless that happens, this is not going to change.
Thank you so much. Judith?
Let's make it an election issue for next year. I quite agree, sir. It's not my job to do that. I think I'm just going to go back to the teachers. And what I would like to see, I think, is something where we recognise the levels of unemployment in Pakistan and the needs of these large classes until we bring those teacher-pupil ratios down. Sink a lot more money and attention and professionalism into training the teachers, not just before they get into the classroom, but while they're in the classroom as they carry on through their careers, and make it a profession that the talented and those who would expect high salaries and who have a great deal of commitment to society want to take up. Not the sense that, oh, well, we'll keep the salaries low and therefore it will be the less successful people that go into teaching. We need to sort of change the way people see teachers. And on the employment part, I would put classroom assistants in. Have a teacher, have a classroom assistant, because then you can actually respond to the diversity that you've got in a class. If you have a dyslexic child or a child with learning or hearing or sight problems, you need an extra pair of hands in the classroom. If you've got somebody with attention deficit disorder, one teacher gives that child all the learning, 29 kids sit and fail probably. So boost the capacity that you've got in the classroom by investing in the teacher and put a classroom assistant in as well.
Thank you, Judith. Yep, you got it.
I got it. So I'm going to go back to redefining and reimagining what success looks like. Every child has something to offer. It can be unique, and understanding what this child needs in terms of learning, development, needs to be rethought, engaged, and amplified. I think
So-
that is criteria for success.
Okay, so we'll now, I've got some audience questions, and Mr. Javed, some are for you. So I will start with that. How can we stop our kids from watching or viewing inappropriate content on digital media when they are searching for all the information and useful learnings online? So if somebody's saying if you're going to Khan Academy and you think your child is going to Khan Academy, what do we do if they're not?
So as a father of three, and one of them that's sort of getting to that age, the problem right now is if you let them watch YouTube or social media from your channels are unfiltered. And the way these algorithms and tags work, they bring in all the subsequent pieces that
Yes.
are like those pieces of content
Yeah.
to your feed. So it's very hard to sort of unsee what shows up there. So creating a separate channel, whatever that is, whether it's YouTube or something, for the child, and keeping the parental controls on it is one way. One piece I'm actually not a proponent of is completely taking kids away from technology, because guess what? This is what they're going to be using in the future. So I've heard,
Yeah.
I was on the panel, I was listening to the panel earlier, there were talks about limiting time on the on the iPhone or the computer and so forth. If you think about it, all your life functions are converging on these devices. Your banking, your communication, your learning, all of them are coming to this. So when you're on your phone, you're not necessarily just on Facebook. You could be doing so many other things that are related to your work or something as well. So parental controls are important. These technologies are here to stay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, right now, the only thing connected is your phone. Wait for a time when everything in this room, including everything
Yeah.
you're wearing, will be connected.
Mm-hmm.
So think in those dimensions.
And
On where
absolutely,
things
and
will
you know,
go.
there's something I want to share with you. My daughter said this to me. She said, "Mama, you are you are adapting to this, whereas we were born into this technology.
right.
So as adults, we'll continue to try to learn it, whereas our children have it at their fingertips." So
I mean, I think it is about role modelling. I think as a teacher, you have an enormous amount of contact time with children, and as the children get older, they spend more time with their teachers and their peers than they do with the parents, and that's a tough one, letting them go in that way. But I think, therefore, the values, the behaviours, particularly the language they use, as Aurélie was saying, the sort of respect that they show to the children as individuals, other children automatically pick up on it.
Yeah.
If you beat up on a child mentally or physically in your class, the children will do the same as soon as they go out into the playground, because that child becomes labelled as a victim, as a target, as somebody that we can dismiss and see somehow as a lesser human being. Equally, I go back to, I think I missed the talk this morning, but this sense of inclusiveness. Who has to tell me that I'm a woman, so I have to be included, or I'm a foreigner, I have to be included?
Yeah.
If we can stop listing people who have to be included, be they of a different religion or a different level of wealth or a different level of ability, we start to stop talking about the other in that way. And I think, therefore, the teachers, in terms of language and just the even-handedness that they show to children, and if it's helping somebody in a wheelchair or helping somebody who can't see, it's a practical piece of management within a classroom. It doesn't mean you have to patronise or treat them as a less able person.
That's
It's
it.
just fixing it for equal opportunities within the classroom.
I hope that answered your question very quickly. That was well done, Judith. 1 minute. Aurélie, there's a question for you, and somebody feels that there's a lack of substantial middle-class values and ethos in Pakistan. I don't know if I agree with that or not, but is that a major gap in terms of promoting an inclusive classroom?
Yeah.
There is not a substantial middle class in this country. And do you think that's what's stopping us from creating inclusive classrooms? Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a class. I mean, of course, there's a class thing, but what I'm talking about, when I'm talking about what I said before, no, the nonviolent communication, the gratitude, the mindfulness, etc., these costs nothing. These are methods that cost nothing, not investment. They don't cost. You don't have to have a phone or etc. So. Yes, we need in any country a kind of leading middle class who might be more aware of this, definitely. But I do believe as well that that it's on us, no, to change our mindset. I think it's something very individual that we have to work on as teachers, our parents. Do we want to raise happy kids at the end of the day? Do we want to raise kids who have an inclusive mindset? Or do we want to raise sheeps?
Yeah. Thank you, panel. We are out of time now. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for enlightening us with your